Hi, I'm Esther.
And I'm Sean.
I write about AI news here at TechTarget.
And I edit Esther's stories.
We're here to talk to tech experts about everything AI, from open and closed models to AI agents and who's ahead in the generative AI race.
And even the elusive AGI.
We've got it covered, right, Sean?
Yep, we've got it covered.
So, hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Targeting AI podcast from Informa TechTarget editorial. Our guest today is Jay Patel. He's SVP and GM Cisco Webex for CX. He's focusing on customer experience there, obviously. Before this role, Jay was VP and GM for Webex CPaaS for 3.5 years. Before that, he was CEO of Immobile, which is now part of Webex. He was there for more than a decade as CEO. So, welcome.
Well, we are so excited to have you. So we would like to start with just getting to know a little bit more about WebEx AI Assistant. So what is WebEx AI Assistant? What does it do? And how does it benefit workplace users?
So the WebEx AI Assistant that we're putting into our WebEx Contact Center product essentially serves a number of the personas that exist in a contact center. So within a contact center, you typically have agents, you have supervisors, you have analysts, and you have admins. And the assistant helps each of them in their roles. And I mean, I can go through each of what we do for each of them. But essentially, for example, with agents, it helps them with the fact that agents have a lot of information overload. The website agent helps with things like summarizing calls. So when, for example, you've been onto a website and you've had a chatbot conversation, and you hand that call back into a call center, it can summarize that so the agent can pick that up quickly without having to read through the whole text. It helps the agent with a set of information to help them suggest responses to particular questions that the caller may be asking. It helps supervisors to monitor the performance of an agent by looking at things like their auto CSAT score. It helps the analysts in a call center analyze the topics that are being discussed on the calls. And it helps administrators create these bots and agents and train those agents, the AI agents, for the call center.
That's cool. So I'm going to ask you about the benefits of AI agents in customer experience, and I know, and later we'll ask you about your predictions for agentic AI. But right now, what are AI agents doing in CX, or what will they be doing soon? I mean, have you already deployed AI agents for CX on your platform, or is that something you're about to do?
So we have many of those features in beta currently with customers. And they will go GA in the first quarter of next year, and many more of the features. It's a rolling program of introducing new capabilities for the AI. I mean, and again, we should separate what we mean by AI agents and AI assistants. So we have the idea of the WebEx AI agent that sits in front of a contact center and basically helps, is like an AI front door, and helps with things like containing calls, concierging calls, and making sure that we route the calls through to the right human agents. And then, so that's the WebEx AI agent. We also have the AI assistant, the WebEx AI assistant for the call center, which is more like a co-pilot for the personas. So the co-pilot for the agent themselves. So the AI agent, the AI front door, is currently in beta. Will be launched in February, March. It has a support number of languages when it's launched. The AI assistant, some of it's GA today, so things like some of the topic analytics, some of the auto CSAT is live with customers today. And then we're going to roll out many more features next year, early next year.
That's very interesting. I just want to take a little bit of a step back and perhaps have you dive into when you guys kind of saw this like AI agent taking over CX, right? Because I feel like, for most people, or at least for me, AI agents really did become popular recently. And I know the technology has been around and I know there's been like talks on the underground, but how did you plan it out? To make it, I guess, as part of your platform? When did you, I guess, predict that we would need AI agents in customer service, John?
I think, unfortunately, there's just a lot of noise about AI agents, and there's been a lot of change. Chatbots have been around for quite a long time, and we ourselves have been building chatbots for quite a long time. But they've been typically for very simple use cases, and they've typically been, I would say, costly to build and limited in their functionality. And this is, and we've had bots for rearranging your appointment with a doctor, or asking, where is your order? So bots that do that kind of work have been around, and lots of people have been building them. And what has changed in the last 2 years, really, and this is the big breakthrough, the big change, is that with the LLMs and the idea of generative AI, you've actually solved some of the previous problems that we had with bots. So historically, the problem with bots often was that you had to stick to a certain syntax when you messaged for the bot to understand you. Now, actually, a LLM can fill in the gaps. So you might say, historically, if you did not have the exact wording that said, I want to change my train from Liverpool to Manchester, unless you had the exact wording, or unless somebody had programmed 1,000 derivatives, you would not actually, the bot would not respond to you. Now, what's happened with LLMs is the LLMs will recognize largely anything for its intent in a way that's more fuzzy than it was before, and therefore a lot more derivatives are possible. So the understanding of what a human wants, whether it's through a text or voice, has improved dramatically in the last couple of years. And the second thing that's massively improved is, obviously, with generative AI, you can generate a human-like conversation, not a historic bot-like conversation. So we've been working in this area for a very long time, but generative AI really has changed the possibilities and just made that experience far, far better and much, much cheaper to introduce and provide customers. So that's really the big change that we see in the last couple of years. And that's where we see that there's a real possibilities now to have AI as an AI front door, to recognize any kind of customer intent, to have a natural language conversation, to have a voice natural language conversation, because there's also now a lot more businesses creating that layer of technology. So yeah, there's been a lot of change in the last couple of years.
I just want to say that's the clearest explanation I've heard yet about that change, that shift.
The way I describe it often is it fills in the weaknesses and the gaps we had before in a way that on the input area, because it just understands it better. We all have different ways of expressing ourselves, and I think that LLMs now understand what you want to say, and then it's great. And then also the other thing was the robotic sounding nature of previous bots was, again, because they each had to be programmed. And now you can have it natural language in any kind of accent you want, because the amount of investment also that has gone in to this area in the last few years is astounding. We know something like $200 billion of capex is being spent in this area. And again, one of the other ways that I look at this is historically, maybe 1,000 companies spent $10 million each and built a bot that was a $10 million bot. And it could do certain things, and some people got it right, some people got it wrong. What you've had today is you've had a few companies, only a few, that have built a central brain costing billions. And they are willing to lend that out, right, to us for maybe a couple of £1 million each. So what you've really had is you've had this massive breakthrough because of the investment cycle that's taken place, and the fact that the people who invested that money are willing to essentially monetize it through lending it out to the rest of us. So now we benefit from that much bigger investment and brain that's been created. And that's why we've had the breakthroughs we've had. And that's why I'm very excited about what's going to happen next.
That's great. I wanted to ask, and I'm not sure if you're saying kind of a little bit of this, but does RPA play a role in this at all?
I think RPA does play a role. I think the real challenge for everybody is to go from the historic binary ways of coding, A and B, and even RPA, whether you had whether it was rules based, to the fact that now some of these systems don't need to be so rules based because the engine has learnt through machine learning what it needs to do to get a task fulfilled. So I think that all of these, the whole chain from input all the way to output does not need to be as defined in detail as it was, and that's why I think there is so much possibilities. And so for example, one of the things that I think we are investing in, and we have a particular edge in, is the ability not just to have the AI agent understand a customer and talk back to a customer, but we also believe that most customers ultimately call to get something fulfilled. Now, I want to change my appointment. I want to get a refund. I want to change the color or the size of something I've ordered. Now, that involves, again, a set of inputs and outputs and integrations into backend systems. And what we're seeing is our abilities to integrate into those backend systems is also made easier because of AI, because you have co-pilots for coding, because you can basically have, our agent talk to the other agent, and that is also going to be something which means that you can create agentic AI. You can have more processes that have are process automated, whether you call it robotic or something else. That process automation is only going to increase massively because you've got you don't need to code everything. That's the big thing that I think has changed. You don't need to set up all the rules.
I like what you said. The rules kind of go back, and you're doing it without,
Well,
the guard.
historically, somebody would have had to have sat there and said, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then
Okay.
that, if this, then that. And now the machine itself has worked out all those derivatives and said, here was a box, put something in, and it will just put it out. That's the bit that I think is a huge change.
Can you talk a little bit about the WebEx AI contact center tools? How do they improve contact center employees and customers' experience?
Well, I think from the customer experience side, what we're hoping to achieve with the set of tools is ultimately that you wait less. So obviously reducing that time, which I think is, we'd all like to wait less because you can introduce the idea of the AI front door that when you need to find something out, there's an AI agent to handle some of those calls, so that the more complex queries can go through to human agents. So I mean, people do still often call for, how do I pay this bill? What is my account balance? I mean, there's still a lot of things that basically take up human agents that can go through to a virtual agent, and I think therefore we're going to be able to handle many more calls, therefore improve customer experience in terms of the average handling times. One of the other things is, for example, customer experience when you call, and sometimes you do get drop calls. Maybe your signal goes down, maybe there's an issue with the network. Again, when you call back, the ability to recognize you've called back, the ability to know what your previous conversation was, hand it over to an agent so you can pick up the call from when you left off. Again, these are not, it's relatively straightforward to do that kind of work going forwards. But the most important thing from customer experience is the ability to get whatever you want done. And that for me is the bit that I think is going to be the most interesting bit, which is, again, by using agentic AI, you will be able to talk to a virtual agent. The virtual agent will be able to kick off a bunch of processes that will then fulfill your request, not just create another ticket in a big ticketing system. I think from an employee standpoint in the contact center, not only will it, I think, reduce information overload because you can summarize, but also we launched a feature called Agent Wellness. So again, if you're answering 10, 15 calls an hour, there's a certain cadence, there's a certain speech pattern, there's a certain vocal way that you're going to answer these calls. Um, the agent can pick up whether you're getting tired, whether you're being the same bubbly self you were at the start of the hour at the end, and it can then suggest to take a break when you need a break. It might realize that you had a particularly difficult call because often customers call very frustrated. They may shout at somebody. And then if you've had a difficult call, again, agent wellness feature will mean that the supervisor knows that this set of agents has had a set of difficult calls. Maybe they're the ones who need a break now. So there's ways of improving the employee experience inside the contact center that we think we can also use AI for.
Okay, so Jay, you're not a generative AI company or developer. You're communications and work collaboration and CX. What generative AI and let's say large language model technology does Cisco use? Do you lease like any number of models with Anthropic, OpenAI, Claude, Mistral, etc.? Or are you Google, or are you just with one vendor?
We do use different models for different use cases. I wouldn't say it's all of the above you mentioned there, but we work with Microsoft and the OpenAI LLM. We have an investment at Cisco level in Mistral, and we use some of the Mistral open source tools, and then we also have our own AI coming from the Voicea acquisition and other acquisitions that Cisco's made in the past for particular parts of transcription. I mean, that's not an LLM, but that's a different part of the AI stack. But fundamentally, what we are looking at is we're looking at the idea of an AI engine for each use case. So, and within the AI engine, you would have a particular LLM. You may have a ASR, a TTS. You'd have different components to get to the solution that you want to get to with a client. You also potentially have different cost structures, because we know that some may need higher levels of tokens and reasoning, and it's a more complex task. Others may be relatively straightforward, or you can open source the technology. So we've built our platform in a way that ultimately will allow customers to decide which AI engine they want to use, and potentially also introduce their own components, because some of the customers have their own arrangements for using a particular LLM across their business, and may want to use that LLM in the contact center, surrounded by the other components we have. And again, we will over phases allow them to actually do that as well. So yeah, the idea of bring your own LLM, or the idea of bring your own components, is something that we also recognize we will need to do, because again, I think customers are going to be very careful about wanting to use too many models in their business. There's security, privacy, policy. There's a whole range of reasons why. So again, we recognize that we want to provide flexibility. We want to be their partners to improve customer experience overall, and using the technologies that suit them best. We will have our own set of models and say, hey, this is our model based on Cisco's AI principles of transparency of what we're doing, security, privacy, and to the extent they want to introduce their own, or they want us to use theirs, and it fits in with our principles, we'll be able to do that as well.
Do you think that this is kind of the way that vendors like yourself can find success? Because you're not the only one, obviously, that offers like that
Yeah.
flexibility of having, different LLMs on your
Yeah.
platform, and also having your own. Does that help you be profitable, or do you find that it really doesn't matter?
I think, look, firstly, we're in the really early days of this. We are in the really, really early days of this, right? So I think that being flexible, it makes sense. And I think customers and we will iterate to what works. And I think that's the thing that we've still got to, all of us have got to work out. what works, what's going to be acceptable to customers, the end customer, right? So the end customer, and we'll basically have, obviously you're going to tell them that they're speaking to an AI virtual agent. In the virtual agent AI front door, it's one of the reasons why everybody gives them a name, right? So there's always a name for the person, the AI agent, because they want to say, hey, this is X, your AI agent. And some customers will say, yep, great, I don't mind. Some are going to go, no. Again, what works in that context and what use cases are best and what technology to use underneath it, I think all of us will feel our way to what works for the end customer and what works commercially for our customers. But I think you're just going to see quite a lot of change in the next couple of years. One of the things that I say that is always quite interesting is whenever a new medium comes along and a new way of communication comes along, it never really replaces the previous one. So everything from letters and post to email to mobile and SMS to push notifications to now two-way chat and maybe a two-way virtual agent, they're all going to coexist, and customers have different preferences for different forms based on their own tastes, preferences, technology, and predilection, and the use case. So I think that you have inherent complexity in this communication game, and the suppliers have got to basically offer customers and find what works. For example, email is still very prevalent right now. Some people never read their emails. There's too much spam. Others rely on email. One of the use cases today, and again, we're talking about AI. I remember 3 or 4 years ago looking at email as a channel for communication, for two-way communication. And the problem set only 5 years ago was if someone wrote you an email, to actually get a machine to respond in natural language to an email was really hard because of the context window. It was long versus a chatbot, and actually responding in a natural language way was difficult. Now it's actually relatively straightforward. And again, years ago, email and spam and junk is a problem. Maybe in the next couple of years, your AI assistant on your phone will work out what's spam and what's not, and only surface to you what isn't. So I think we're all going to have to be quite flexible in our thinking about what is going to work for what customers, or for which customers. I think you've got lots of youngsters clearly, using and lots of people now using WhatsApp. Lots of people using text-based, group-based messaging for family and friends. But at the same time, they would never think of texting the business, right? But they do it with family and friends. I think there's going to be just going to be a lot of change, and behind it all, you've got this AI layer that's going to have to be consistent, I think, across communication channels. And I think the question you raise, Esther, is does that need to be consistent across all parts of an enterprise? And I'm not sure it necessarily does. I do think you can't really use different LLMs different vendors for different channels and expect consistency. I think that's going to be quite difficult.
Well, I'm curious about what differentiates your Gen AI approach from competitors like Zoom, like Zendesk, like Microsoft. How are you deploying it differently, or what's your particular route that you're taking?
Most people's approach to generative AI, I think it's very, very similar. I think what is different is areas of focus, and for us, our areas of focus is that ultimately we have contact centers, we have AI, and we have CPaaS, and we believe that you need to integrate all of it together so that you're more proactive in your communication, so that AI can be used to find the patterns and the events when you need to communicate. So, for example, there's an outage, or you've gone overdrawn, or actually, the best one, the one that I would love to get out there is, for example, your service provider knows when you have a very large bill that you're going to call them about and complain because they send it to you, right? But are they proactive in sending you the bill or preempting sending you the bill and actually reaching out to you and saying, hey, this month, please know you've got a large bill because you actually subscribe for 3 additional movies, or you subscribe for the sports pack, or you went overdrawn, whatever the reason being. By being proactive, explaining it to you, you won't call the call center. So I think we're going to see a lot more what I call event-based communication, proactive communication, outbound, that we do particularly well, that powered by AI. And then the response path to that, again, we think there will be AI agents involved in some of the more simpler use cases. So again, for example, if you haven't paid a bill, they can obviously call you, in the outbound call center. But probably a better way of doing it is probably to send you a message with a link to then basically make the payment, and have an AI agent maybe help you make that payment as well. We also have technologies around richer media messaging, which is WhatsApp, RCS, that is a much more engaging format for communication, which combined with AI, we think is going to lead to higher conversion and higher engagement. We then, one of the differentiators we see is that we also want to focus on outcomes. We want to focus on how can we help the customer drive the outcome, which is, I want to change my appointment. I want to change my delivery address. There's a lot of things that involve integrating the back-end systems that, again, if I look at the heritage that we have, our heritage from CPaaS and CCaaS together probably gives us a much broader set of integrations into enterprises than maybe some of the other pure contact center players. So, I think, when you mention Microsoft and Zoom, we're all coming at this market from different angles with different strengths. Our strength definitely is in the CPaaS and CCaaS assets coming together. Zoom's assets are definitely, obviously, in the fact that they had the video business. Microsoft's got its strengths, so we're all coming at it from different angles. My focus is very much on empowering our customers to improve the way they communicate and interact with their customers across all the different channels.
You spoke in the beginning about AI agents. Please elaborate on your prediction that 2025 is the year AI becomes indispensable in customer service. Also, what are your customer service predictions for?
You have this exponential investment taking place at the infrastructure layer that's creating better LLMs, and then we're all building applications on top. So you're going to just see, I think, an acceleration next year of actual use cases with customers. I think everybody has been, this year's been a year of trials, testing, creating data sets. There's been a lot of work this year, and I think next year you're going to see a lot more live use cases, and I think that's something which, it's probably the least riskiest prediction anybody's going to make ever. The thing that's also for me interesting, or will be interesting, is not just what the vendors do and what service providers and brands do, but also consumers will be given tools. So you've now seen, obviously, the launch of Apple Intelligence. We've seen a mainstream campaign by Google around Gemini and what Gemini can do. So you've got essentially not only businesses deploying agents, deploying the infrastructure, you're now also going to get consumers saying, "Hey, actually, I'm quite interested in this stuff. What can it do for me?" And I think the really interesting part is how does the consumer side and the brand side come together, and and how will they talk to each other, and will that happen next year? Now that's something which I would be very interested to see, because you might say, hey, look, I mean, if I've got an Apple device, hey, Apple Intelligence, order me a taxi. Now, will it be able to read your calendar, find where you need to go, know where you are, and order you a taxi? And then that probably has to talk to the 3 or 4 apps or the 3 or 4 providers of taxi services that want to buy that intent. And so I think that's going to be quite an interesting area, because it kind of opens up the whole market again in terms of consumers. We all want to service consumers in terms of what do they want to do. And we're focused on enabling our customers in contact centers and the tools for them to talk to their customers. But we need to be very cognizant of what consumers themselves are going to empower themselves with. And that, I think, is going to be quite an interesting thing for next year. And I think I suspect that we're going to be seeing the first consumer side AI agents enter the market.
That's pretty interesting. I've been fooling around with Apple Intelligence already, but it's not quite ready to order an Uber,
Yes.
read my mind and know where an Uber is, but it might soon. So you just talked a little bit about next year in CX and in AI. So what's in the future for Cisco Webex? What's in the future for you in terms of, what's past agentic AI? What's past, consumer AI?
I think for years, the one thing which in the CPaaS world we were working with, and my previous role as CEO of that business, we were always focused on the idea of frictionless customer experiences. They're just really frictionless. A bit like all those sci-fi movies you would watch, and the world will just be people touching things, and everything happens automatically behind them. So I've always thought that world of endpoints, which are connected to business systems, and connected frictionlessly through IP. That's the world that I still see happening in the next 5 to 10 years, where your intents are known, and the minute you wake up in the morning and open your curtains, and the agent knows your schedule, knows to put the coffee on, and this is all essentially ultimately endpoints. These are, whether these endpoints are endpoints that are on a phone, whether they're in a sensor, and that then has to be essentially over a network back to some kind of system, a business system that reacts to that event. And I think Cisco, we have many of those bits. We have the networks, we have security, which you need for all of that. We have endpoint management. So again, I'm not talking for the Cisco overall strategy, but in terms of how I see the world going, I see that there's just going to be many, many more endpoints. Years ago, our endpoint used to be a PC. We used to log in once a week or once a day to a PC, and that was our endpoint. Now our endpoints you've got several endpoints on the device. You've got Apple AirTags, you've got the Ring devices in your home. So suddenly the number of endpoints has gone up quite significantly. Now those endpoints have a lot of different proprietary systems, and some of them are not very smart. But I think with AI, with large language models, small language models, with the ability to embed AI everywhere, all of those endpoints, you're going to have more of them, and they're going to be smarter. And they're going to communicate back to systems at the end. Therefore, the idea of frictionless customer experiences, I think, will get closer. So, that would be my long range prediction.
I'm just curious, would virtual reality or augmented reality play into that? You're probably already using that on your video platform, but remember the William Gibson books, the original cyberpunk books, where everything was virtual reality and you would move icons around with your hands?
The world I've just described is the physical world of endpoints. I think there's also clearly a huge amount of technology development taking place in the virtual reality world. So I'm sure you've seen that we have introduced Webex within the devices,
Vision Pro,
the Vision Pros,
metaverse headsets. Yeah.
and again the ability to pick up touch and sensors and to have a remote working and remote communications. So the idea of zero distance in your communications, we're working on those things, and I think that's also going to meld with the world of multiple endpoints. And I think this is where it'll come back to use cases. When I want to be somewhere else, when I want to have a meeting with my colleagues and feel like I'm in the room, and these devices I can put on and have a 3D experience. I think that's super interesting. Would I want to do that all day long for everything I do? I don't know, but there's no doubt that underlying all of this is the network, and that underlying all of this is the idea of endpoints and the idea of security, and ultimately the idea that AI can make all of this better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the Targeting AI podcast. For our listeners and viewers, you can find us on the Informa TechTarget Enterprise AI website and all the popular podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google. Please follow us and leave us a review. You can connect with Jay on LinkedIn, I believe, right, Jay?
Yep.
As well as reach out to Cisco if you so wish. Targeting AI is also on YouTube on Informa TechTarget's YouTube channel, IO Tech. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.